This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you Episode 4 of Season 5 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, January 27th, 1912, and I'll elaborate on what was happening in Westford that week. The week starts with the Westford Center section. Mrs. Ida M. Gould is acting as housekeeper and companion for Mrs. Tyler in the latter's pleasant new home. Mr. and Mrs. James Wilson gave a pleasant party for their daughter Florence at their home on Boston Road last Saturday afternoon. It was the young lady's 10th birthday anniversary, and a group of her school friends were invited. There were games and refreshments of ice cream, cake, and fruit were enjoyed. Also, the proverbial birthday cake and candles were not missing. Mrs. W. Wright has been confined to the house with an attack of the grip and under the doctor's care, but is now convalescing. Mrs. James Hildreth, whose maiden name was Sarah Rebecca Tenney, Tenney, who passed her 94th birthday last Sunday, was the recipient of cards, messages, and calls to mark the event. She is in comfortable health for one of her years, and these manifestations of goodwill were met with the same cheerful appreciation toward the blessings of life that have always been so characteristic of her. Mrs. William Green's many friends are glad she is sufficiently convalescent from her long critical illness of pneumonia and heart trouble to be able to ride out. She was out Sunday a little while during the warmer part of the day for the first time in many weeks. Frank Bannister noticed in the Westford Depot neighborhood on Tuesday of this week a particularly large bird flying about. Calling John O'Brien's, the blacksmith's, attention to it, he identified it as a large eagle. Mr. O'Brien, who was something of an authority in bird lore, pronounced it an especially large bird of its kind. Mr. and Mrs. Emery Whitney and Mr. and Mrs. J. Willard Fletcher were in attendance at the Masonic Eastern Star Banquet at Ayer on Wednesday evening of this week. Dexter Cogshaw, principal of the Academy, has been appointed a member of the Board of Trustees of the J.V. Fletcher Library in place of Reverend Benjamin Bailey, resigned. Mr. and Mrs. Abile Abbott and Miss Alice Abbott sailed on Wednesday from New York City for a trip around the world. Miss Mary Drew underwent an operation for appendicitis at a private hospital in Brookline on Thursday of this week. Mrs. Oscar Spaulding entertained the Thimble Club at her home on Wednesday afternoon of this week with a full attendance of members and one guest present. The next section is called Congregational Notes. At the Congregational Church on last Sunday evening, that's the church that is now the CPA on Lincoln Street. At the Congregational Church on last Sunday evening, Dr. Yarnell, connected with the YMCA work in Lowell, was the speaker of the evening. He presented the, quote, Men and Religion movement, end quote, and outlined what the campaign had endeavored to accomplish in strengthening the service and interest of men and boys in the work of the church. There was a large audience present. Houghton Osgood conducted the praise service, and Mrs. Charles Colburn rendered special music. A special meeting of the WCTU, that's the Women's Christian Temperance Union, took place on Tuesday afternoon at the home of Mrs. Emery Whitney. There were 18 in attendance, and beside other routine business, plans were made for having the state president, Mrs. Catherine Lenty Stevenson, present on February 9th to give an address in the Congregational Church. The next section is about the Westford Grange. At the Grange last week, Thursday evening, there was a good meeting and a large attendance of the members. The attendance was nearly up to 100. The new officers filled their respective places in a way that spoke well for a good standard of efficiency for the coming year. Mrs. Clara Grieg, the new lecturer, had the year's program ready for distribution. On the outside of these is a good picture of the town hall, which has always been the Grange's meeting place since its organization in 1895. Inside are the officers and committees, the program for the year, and a printed list of the members. Plans for the Farmers Institute were discussed, and the Institute is invited for the second week in February. The program for the evening consisted of good music by the young people and was as follows: violin duet, Evelyn Hamlin and Everett Miller, accompanied by Miss Hazel Hartford at the piano, vocal duet by Mrs. Beatrice and Lillian Sutherland, and solo, The Songs My Mother Used to Sing by Lillian Sutherland. This was followed by a bright sketch called Interviewing a Granger, presented by Samuel L. Taylor and William R. Taylor, father and son. This little skit of Taylor and Son was very cleverly done and much appreciated. Next, we have a death to report. Mrs. John P. Wright has the sincere sympathy of her many friends in her sudden bereavement owing to the death by peritonitis of her only sister, Mrs. Josephine Bright Baker, at her home in Whitesville, New York. Mrs. Wright received a message of her sister's critical illness on Saturday and went on Sunday to Whitesville, her sister passing away the next morning. Mrs. Baker is remembered by Westford friends as Miss Josephine Bright, and for some time previous to her marriage made her home with Mr. and Mrs. Wright. A few years ago, she was married to Reverend Frank Baker, a Methodist minister. He was a widower with a little son about a year old, and to this little boy she gave a mother's care and affection. Since her marriage, 3 children have been born, the youngest being an infant but a few days old. The funeral was held on Thursday at her girlhood home, the home of her parents, in South Royalston, Vermont. Mrs. Wright attended the funeral. The next section is about a social. The monthly supper and social took place at the Congregational Church on Wednesday evening. Moonlight and good sleighing proved a good combination to bring out a large attendance. Seats at the supper tables were all taken, and tables had to be reset. The mystery supper, for the very nominal charge, proved very enjoyable, the menu consisting of vegetable and meat hash, cold meat, rolls, coffee, and fancy pies. Next, we have the About Town section. Hugo Page, it's spelled P-A-G-E in the newspaper, but it's correctly spelled P-A-I-G-E. Hugo Page has been on the sick list again and under the care of Dr. Blaney. During his relapse, the hum of the old sawmill, with its familiar buzz, is quiet. Wallace Johnson has been on the quiet list as a result of fractured ribs. His usual harvesting of ice on Burgess Pond is under headway, and Westford Center and other close-by surroundings will soon have its summer supply housed. Work at the H.E. Fletcher Quarry has curtailed to the usual winter proportions. The steam shovel is still working and will continue for several weeks with a gang of about 25 men. A recent break in the steam shovel caused a postponement of the time planned to finish the work of excavating. Milk is extremely flush in the valley farms of the Stony Brook, and as a result, part of the raisers will be dropped the 1st of February. This milk will probably be sold at Westford Station, where a large share of Westford milk is being delivered. With butter at present prices, milk ought not be flush a great while. There was a largely attended meeting of the West Chelmsford Debating Society on Tuesday evening when the following question was discussed: resolved that capital punishment should be abolished. The question was decided in the negative. The next meeting will be on Tuesday evening, February 6th, when the following question will be discussed: resolved that women should have the right of suffrage. Speakers will be announced later. Now we have the Forge Village section. On last week, Thursday evening, a stereopticon lecture on Egypt was given in Recreation Hall by Reverend Endicott Peabody, Doctor of Divinity, of Groton. which proved to be both interesting and instructive to the large number that was present. Mr. Peabody only returned from abroad but a few months ago, and his descriptive talk on places he visited was certainly enjoyable. The proceeds of the affair will be used for a most worthy cause. Many lovers of music from the village attended the concert given by the Lowell Choral Society in Association Hall, that city, on Tuesday evening, and were well rewarded for their journey, as a most excellent program was rendered by the society. The Daniel Gage Ice Company have finished their work of cutting ice on the Forge Pond and will now cut ice on the Merrimack River, Lowell, after which they will work at North Littleton, harvesting ice from Spectacle Pond. The skating on the pond is in first-class condition, and a good number are enjoying the sport at every opportunity. Coasting is at its height also, and Pleasant Street Hill is covered every night with jolly coasting parties. Miss Letitia Ward, principal of Cameron School, will give her pupils their annual sleigh ride on Saturday afternoon, the trip being through Littleton to Acton and return. On next Tuesday evening, January 30th, in Abbott Hall, the annual concert given by the members of the Groton School Orchestra will be held. This affair is always looked forward to by all lovers of good music, and a rare program has been arranged. Now we have the Graniteville section. The Ladies' Aid of the Methodist Episcopal Church held a very successful food sale and entertainment in the church vestry on Friday evening of last week. The food sale was held in the afternoon and continued into the evening, after which a very pleasing entertainment was given by Charles Bernhardt of Boston, assisted by local talent. George Wilson was heard in a piano solo, and Miss Bertha Wilson gave a very pleasing vocal selection. The whole affair was very enjoyable, and the sale netted quite a neat sum for the treasury. The ice cutting at Forge Pond is now finished, and work has already been started by Wallace Johnson at Burgess Pond, where the town of Westford gets its supply. Judging from present weather conditions, all the ice houses will be filled, and the people do not need to worry over an ice famine next summer. Next section is about speed trials. Great interest is being shown in the coming speed trials for horses to be held on Forge Pond on this Saturday afternoon. J. Austin Healy with his fast trotter, Dolly C., and Harry Harrington with his speedy colt will be in the lineup, and it is expected that Dr. Cyril Blaney of Westford and Angus MacDonald of Littleton, who always drives a speedy horse, will be on hand. Mr. Wesley of Acton will also be present with a fast one, while others will be present from Lowell, Groton, Pepperell, and all the surrounding towns. Everything is free, and all are welcome. It is thought that the Yap stables of Littleton will send over some fast ones for first honors. All roads lead to Forge Pond this Saturday afternoon for the speed trials. The next section is called Entertainment and Dance. The members of St. Catherine's Choir held a very pleasing entertainment and social dance in Abbott Hall, Forge Village, last week, Friday evening. That was a great success, both from a social and financial standpoint. Instead of having the musical program consist entirely of local talent, the management had secured for this occasion the talented Robbins family, entertainers of Wakefield, and their versatile group presented a program that was highly pleasing and filled with snap from beginning to end. Although there was not a dull moment at any time, and all did finely in their respective parts, due credit should be given to little Harold Robbins, for the clever manner in which he sang his songs made a tremendous hit, while his different impersonations took is in parentheses, in quotes, took the house. The Robbins family are certainly very clever people. The 1910 family shows this family living in Wakefield. Jeffrey Robbins, 39, a machinist, is the head of the household. His wife is Minnie, and the children are Gertie, 16, Margaret, 14, Lawrence, 12, Mabel, 10, Harold, 8, George, 6, Joseph, 3, and Mary, 11 months. The parents were born in French Canada, the father coming to the U.S. in 1889 and the mother in 1890 for the 1910 census. The local numbers on the program were given by songs from Miss Sadie Smith, Miss Rebecca LeDuc, and a vocal quartet composed of Robert J. McCarthy, James Burns, James May, and Henry LeDuc, Miss Mary F. Hanley being the accompanist. Immediately after the entertainment, dancing was enjoyed to excellent music given by the Charlton Orchestra of Graniteville, Miss Agnes Charlton, pianist, Frank Charlton, violin, Mrs. Lester McClenna, guitar, Arthur Charlton, and Mrs. John Burnett, mandolin. The pleasing singing of the above-named orchestra added greatly to the success of the dance numbers. Refreshments were served during intermission. The whole affair was very enjoyable and reflects great credit on the following committees who gave material aid to the success of the affair. Executives: Miss Mary Hanley, Chair, James Burns, Secretary, James May, Treasurer. Supper Committee: Miss Catherine Hanley, Miss Sadie Smith, Miss Mary Gardner, Miss Christine Lowther, Miss Nellie Burns, Miss Rebecca LeDuc, Miss Dora LeDuc, Mrs. James May, Miss Catherine May, Mrs. William H. Healy, Miss Agnes Charlton, Mrs. Lester McClenna. Reception: Reverend M. E. Doherty and Albert R. Wall, Robert McCarthy, and Henry LeDuc. And that's the news in Westford for the week ending January 27th, 1912. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Ryan Cousins of WestfordCAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions and podcasts from the Westford Wardsman at our website at museum.westford.org or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from days gone by. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.